Hello, in this video I'm going to talk about the hypnotherapy book Miracles on Demand by Charles Tebbetts. This is often touted as kind of the holy grail of all hypnotherapy books, and it's often said to be amazing and miraculous, as the title suggests. And I first heard about it 6 years ago and I wanted to read it then, but one thing that stopped me was the price. So if you don't know, this book is very hard to find. And if you think, oh, I'll go online and I'll find it, yep, everyone else just thought of that. And it's quite hard to find, even online, anywhere. You'll often only find 2 or 3 copies for sale anywhere. And it costs normally a minimum of £160. I've seen it going up to as much as £700 for a copy of this book. So is it worth it? And what's it all about? Well, I've just finished reading it this morning. It took me 3 days on and off to read it. And the first thing I'd like to say is I got it for £65. I've no idea why they sold it that cheaply. I don't know why it was that cheap. It's a book. Yes, I think it's a newer edition, and there's like a slight fold in the corner there. Does anyone really care? I've no idea why they sold it that cheap, because this same copy goes for over £160. But there you go, they sold it, so I bought it. So this is a book for anyone who's interested in hypnotherapy. And even if you're not going to become a therapist, I recommend reading it, because if you've got a problem that you've been unable to fix for years, it shows you that there is hope. So it's written by Charles Tebbetts, who was born in the 1920s and was, until he died not too long ago, the oldest practicing hypnotherapist in the world. And he trained a lot of the current day greats such as Roy Hunter. And it tells his autobiography in the back. It actually recommends you read the last 40 pages or so first to learn more about him. There is Charles Tebbetts. And I'll go over briefly what it is. He talks first of all about how hypnotherapy can be used to fix problems. He talks about the various uncovering techniques, and I do recommend, if you're going to read this, you may want to read the hypnotherapy books first, so you already know a little bit about it. It's not, I'd say, advanced, but it does kind of help if you know a bit about hypnosis before reading this. What I love about this book is that it starts off in a brutally honest way. I won't read too much of it because of copyright reasons and whatever, but it starts off straight away, chapter 1, what the hypnotherapist is not. And this is where so many therapists go wrong these days. You are not a counsellor. You are not a social worker. You're not a doctor. You're not a psychologist. And there's a section in this book, chapter later on, where it goes through how each kind of therapy fails people, why it is that psychologists fail, why psychiatrists fail, why doctors fail. And then he tells you why hypnotherapy works. Now, yes, you could say that's being a little bit biased because it's a hypnotherapy book, but he did also train in psychology. And it's very interesting when you see all these different therapies, some of them I'd never heard of, and he tells you why and explains quite clearly their flaws and how they can work and how they cannot work, which is really interesting. It goes into psychology as in, I've just turned to this page, 4 reasons children act in the ways they do. It's got plenty of diagrams. I can't show you too much for copyright and whatever, but yeah, diagrams in the brain, the mind. Something very interesting I didn't know, and I think many therapists won't know, about I won't say because I don't want to say, but if you read the bit about around page 26, 25, you'll learn something about the hemispheres of the mind, the brain, that I didn't know before. And what I love about it is that it goes on to give many case studies. There are at least 4 or 5, I think, detailed case studies. One of them is over 50 pages long. And when I first looked at this book, I think what will attract most people is you open the index and it says chapter 7, the programming and reprogramming of a flasher. Now he tells the story of a man who had this compulsion that whenever he saw a woman, he just had to pull down his trousers and his underwear and he had to flash at women. Now that can sound quite comical to begin with, but it was a terrible problem for him and he was causing big trouble in his life because of work, and whenever he saw a woman at work he felt the need to flash. It wasn't just that he was some weirdo, he actually had a reason for doing it. So you start off thinking, oh, this will be funny, but when you read it and you find out why he did it and what made him do it, it's quite an interesting story as you read it. And there are many others like that. But I do have to say, one thing I've noticed, there are lots of mistakes in this book in terms of spelling mistakes. There's one bit where it says the D. I think it's supposed to say the therapist, and it says the space, just a small letter D, space, did this. And I don't get that, the D. I don't know what the D is. There are quite a few spelling mistakes, like I'm is spelt I apostrophe M E sometimes. Some of the text is kind of not printed, like when he printed it's like very few, but some of the letters didn't form properly. But I think that's how it was written, because it's an old book. It was written years ago, as most therapy books are or were. It talks about inductions, how to hypnotise someone, and there is one way he says to do it, which I certainly wouldn't be doing, and he does say in here, a lot of therapists won't do this, but if you do, it works apparently all the time brilliantly. And I have heard it before, but it's about rapid inductions and how you can put someone into hypnosis instantly, even if they know nothing about it, and even if you haven't done any kind of preconditioning or pre-talk or whatever, you can just go up to someone in the street, boom, hypnosis instantly, which some people who I trained with will tell you is not possible. Some people say it is, some people say it isn't. Is it or not? I don't know. It'll certainly be interesting to see. And there are things here about hypnotising. I actually skipped through some of that part because I've read a lot of that before, and I do find some of it is a little bit unnecessary, like some of the things he says and does, they may be a bit out of date. And he does talk about upcoming new kinds of hypnotherapists in the 1980s that he doesn't agree with, who are probably the people I trained with, because as time goes by, things evolve, methods and thoughts change. And he was a great man who did a lot of great work, and he helped thousands of people all over the world with all kinds of problems. But yeah, some of it is a little bit out of date, like some of it you can cut down, it's maybe a little bit long-winded. But just see what else there is in the chapters, because I waited 6 years to read this book, and I bought it the other day. There's a case study of somebody doing weight loss, there's one of anger, and it largely revolves around parts therapy. If you don't know, Charles Tebbetts was famous for his work with parts therapy, which is what I use a lot, which is where you talk to different parts of someone's mind. There are some interesting cases, one about fingernail biting, there's one about depression. There's a man who'd been around doctors and psychologists and hospitals, and he'd done all these different things, and he was completely fixed in 2 or 3 sessions. And that's one thing I do like about his book, is he makes the point early on, I think it's in chapter 1, that the point of hypnotherapy is it's supposed to be quick. It's not a long, drawn out, month after month after month. And if ever you find a hypnotherapist who is selling long courses of like 10, 20, 30 sessions, that's wrong. That is not what hypnotherapy is. The whole point of hypnotherapy is you go boom, you bypass all the conscious thinking, the logical, years and years and years of psychology and talking and wading through useless theories. You go boom, straight to the subconscious, and you get the answer and you fix it. And there are written testimonials in here from people he's worked with who have said, including doctors, because people always think, oh, doctors doctors mean more. And he'll explain in here why sometimes doctors get it all wrong. Just because you're a doctor doesn't mean you know it all. And yeah, there are in here mentions of videotapes, and I would love to see the tapes of him doing these sessions. I don't think they exist anymore. I think I remember reading in another book that sadly they've been lost to time. But he did video a lot of these sessions, and I would love to see those videos, but I can't find them anywhere. And yeah, Charles Tebbetts himself used hypnosis when he had a stroke, and he used it to recover in 3 days. He could speak again when he'd been told by doctors you won't be able to, and he did. So what do I think of it overall? Was it worth the wait? Definitely. It's a fascinating book, and I recommend it to anyone who is studying hypnotherapy. It isn't cheap. You can expect to pay £160 plus for it, unless, like me, for some bizarre reason you find someone selling it for £65, which I'd love to ask them why they sold it that cheap. Maybe they just didn't know what it was. But yeah, they sold it for £65. It's definitely a brilliant book. It's very smart looking, nice sort of very dark blue. And I love the title, Miracles on Demand, because I always say that hypnotherapy is not a miracle. It's not some wonder cure, it's not magic. But in many ways, it can seem like it is. And I'll finish this by reading one thing that backs up what I always say about driving anxiety has nothing to do with driving. It's funny how some people think that this thing about when I say driving anxiety has nothing to do with driving, people think that I came up with that it's my theory. It's not. That's what you learn when you train to be a therapist. The problem isn't the problem. It's not my theory. I didn't come up with this thing about the problem isn't the problem. Because some people have said to me in the comments, I don't like your theory about driving isn't the cause of the problem. It's not my theory. The first and most basic thing you learn in therapy is that the problem isn't the problem. And it says here, to quote, page 214, this is, the good therapist must realise that the problem which is troubling the client is a side effect or symptom of a defence system of which they are totally unaware. It says she's totally unaware. I'm just changing it because they're talking about someone in particular. This means of defence was formed earlier in life at a time when she was incapable of choosing an appropriate one, and she will cling to it tenaciously until her subconscious mind is convinced that it is no longer necessary. So you see, your mind is giving you a fear of whatever, driving, flying, whatever it is, for a reason which is nothing to do with driving. And if you read this, you'll see many studies of what the real cause of the problem was for many people. And it's nothing to do with, anger. It isn't about anger. There's a man who couldn't sleep. It's nothing to do with not being able to sleep. There's someone who's nail biting. Nothing to do with nail biting. The man who pulled his trousers down in front of women. Now that did have something to do with something that happened similar earlier in his life. But even that case is not that simple. So Miracles on Demand, what an incredible book. I recommend this for anyone. And I was a bit disappointed when the first person who tried me, I said to them, have you ever read Miracles on Demand? And he said, no, didn't even know what it was. And it is like the holy grail of therapy books. So, yeah, it's a big book, about 450 plus pages. I thoroughly recommend this. If you're going to become a hypnotherapist, this is one of the books you've got to read. Maybe after a few others that I've talked about in another video. But yeah, what an incredible book. And there are others written by Charles Tebbetts as well. And if everyone in the world read this book, especially people who work with health, doctors, therapists, if everyone read this, I wonder what the world would be like. Check out these other videos of mine on the screen now for more help. And if you'd like to work with me one-to-one online from anywhere in the world, you can contact me through my website, firstdrive.com. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you again soon for more videos.